Good day, everyone, everyone on the panel, my fellow panelists, and to everyone around the globe that is watching. You couldn't say that before in the day because there used to be just a little box that we used to watch, but now you can do this sort of thing where we can get together some absolutely, marked professionals and talk about things like something simple like life after the game. So welcome everyone to this conference call, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. I've got some really revered, awesome people, some second timers, some newbies on the panel. So I'm going to start by just doing a nice short but sweet introduction to everyone. And then what I think we're going to do is we're going to go through certain elements of life after the game, what that all incorporates, if you are playing sport, what happens when you stop. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce probably our muse for the day, Mr. David McCarty. Okay, this gentleman right here is the man. He's got the experience. He is a former first baseman and outfielder in Major League Baseball. Now, I do have an accent, people. I don't know a lot about baseball, but I'm sure we're going to, David's going to explain everything to us and his whole life story. So you're going to be leaving very fulfilled after this. Just to go back a little bit about him, from 1993 through 2005, he played with the Minnesota Twins. Sorry, for the 2 years, 1993 to 95, he played with the Minnesota Twins. He then went on to the San Francisco Giants, 95, 96. He then went to the Seattle Mariners in 1998, the Kansas City Royals, 2000, 2002, Tampa Bay Devil Rays in 1 year, 2002, Oakland Athletics, 2003, the infamous Boston Red Sox. My wife's from there, so I know a lot about them, 2003, 2005, and he batted right-handed and he threw left-handed. Okay, I don't know anyone who bats right and throws left, but David, welcome to the program. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to just continue to introduce everyone, and then I'm going to come back to you first with the pivotal first question. Okay, so then we have, I want to introduce Mr. Charles Cheshire, who's we've parlayed a little bit in the past. What's going on, Charles?
Hello.
He's the CEO, people, of the Cheshire Group. He's a leader in outsource operation for both small and large corporations. And his latest little thing he's up to, he manages 45 enterprises and entertainment and sports industry icon, where he's worked for the past 7 years, helping influencers manage their careers and maximizing their opportunities. Big business these days. Welcome, Charles. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
And moving on, we're going to go over to Mark Zimmerman, who's on the East Coast. Having lunch, eh, Mark?
I just had.
Oh, you just had, okay. Well, we got something to look forward to over here. Okay, he's a talent and marketing executive who's helped cultivate strong personal impactful relationships with sports and media executives over, wait for it, the past 25 years, guys. So he is a professional. He's done 10 by 10,000 hours. Negotiated tens of millions of dollars of deals with media companies, brands, and marketing outlets. Previously worked as an editorial head of both NFL.com and NBCSports.com. And he began his career in TV production.
I bat
and
righty.
Moving on, we
righty.
have, sorry, Mark, what is that?
I bat and throw righty.
Oh, do you? Wait, you bat and you just like David, right and left. Left and right.
Well, he's left and right. I bat right and throw right.
Okay, that's super confusing for me, but anyway, let's move on. Okay, so I'd love to then move on to our two hosts of this event, the infamous and lovely Jerome and Constantine. They represent the beautiful Fogel and Potamianis group, which is a law firm, for those of you who don't know. These are the two very organized individuals that put these things together. And if you have any question about anything, you can just sort of call them and they will answer. They are both incredible guys. So I'm very honored to have them on here again. making sure that everything stays above board and moving forward. Okay, so let's just talk about Constantine quickly. He's got the one thing about Constantine, and I've done a few talks with him, he's got such a long resume. It's so long that if I had to list everything he's done in his life, the whole life after the game would be done. We'd be just at the end of the hour, we'd be getting to start it. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet now. He's the CEO and founder of Vogel and Potamianis. He's the chief strategy officer there. He's a chief legal officer there. And he is a very experienced management leader and advisor. Not to forget that he is also a first-class entrepreneur, which you can elaborate on in a short while, Constantine. So thank you very much for joining us and giving your expert advice in the past and in the future. I appreciate it. Jerome Vogel, pretty much the same as Constantine. I don't know if lawyers just have extra long resumes, but Jerome would actually, I think they'd be neck and neck actually with the amount of inserts they've had in his life. So it's too much to list. But one thing about Jerome that I've noticed is that Jerome is a finisher. Okay. Have you ever, people out there listening right now, have you ever tried to write a poem even? Okay, have you ever sat down and tried to write any, like a screenplay or whatever? Jerome's written a book, okay? You're in a book and he got it published and people are reading it. That feat alone, for me, is just something to aspire to. So I'm impressed with that. And golf, you know, I've played golf many times with Jerome, and it's one thing, just like he is in the law firm, just like he is when he's writing a book, he's constantly at it. Any spare moment, he's out the office door and he's hitting into a net at the back of the office. So yeah, if you've got nothing to talk to Jerome about on the legal side, go and have a game of golf with him.
True story.
Yeah, he's awesome. Okay, guys, so there we go. That's the introduction for all our panelists. I want to move back to David, who I started with, because like I said, I feel like he's a muse, our muse today. Sport for me is something beyond words. I come from, I grew up in Africa, played very serious rugby. I don't know if any of you ever watched an All Blacks game, All Blacks versus South Africa, where they do a haka, which in essence translates to a war dance, and actually where they, do things like this, which means I'm actually going to, cut you up. That's how vicious and violent the game is. But I think one amazing thing about sports, it transcends everything. So, like I have an accent, I'm living in America and things are slightly different. We don't play baseball, we don't play American football, but when you're playing sport together, it's something that you can really unite on and drive forward. And for me, I was at boarding school my life, and I think sport was one of the things that really taught me a lot of big life lessons about relying on people, working in a team, and all those beautiful attributes that come from being out in the world. And so I think that if you haven't played any sports and you're watching this, I think go and pick up a tennis racket, go and play a game of golf, just get into the habit of doing some sports stuff. I think it's truly amazing. So anyway, that's getting into sport. I think we're talking right now about life after the game. So this is after sport. So David, I mean, obviously you've been, we listed your resume, which is getting to, Jerome and Constantine's link in terms of where you've played and how you played. One question for me is, you jumped around quite a bit. Do you want to just say, just have the floor and just tell us a little bit about your background, what stood out for you, and where you got to, and sort of what happened when you stopped and what moves you made at that point.
Sure. So I think, well, you touched on it. I bounced around a lot. So
yes.
For any of the viewers out there who have kids that play baseball, unless they're pitchers, do not let them hit right-handed and throw left-handed. It's a great way to sentence your kid to being a bench player who can bounce around to a million different teams.
Yeah.
A little bit about me, born and raised in Houston, came out to California, went to Stanford, was the college player of the year for Baseball America in 1991, signed that year, played for 15 years, and then finally retired in 2005. I would say that sports taught me a lot of valuable lessons. I'd say that probably the two most important, just off the top of my head, are learning how to deal with failure and learning how to be a team player. There's a saying in baseball, certainly at the major league level, that I think holds true in a lot of enterprises, and that's if you win, everyone gets paid. And I think far too often people get so focused on their individual achievements rather than the achievements of the group,
Yes.
and the bigger goals that they can lose sight of. That ultimately will be much more rewarding if they focus on those, and it'll help the entire team or organization be more successful.
And just on that quickly, like, so, I've obviously, I'm familiar with baseball. I didn't really get into it because we never played it. But when you talk about like the team building spirit, because to me, baseball does seem a little bit individualistic, in essence that, someone's throwing you the ball, you hit the ball, and you run the bases. So yeah, there may be a little bit of communication there. Where's the lesson you learned in terms of, is it hitting the ball so that your teammate can get ahead to the next base and not thinking about you getting to the next base? Is it kind of like that, like playing it forward almost?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the situation. There are times where as a batter, you have to give yourself up, whether that's, trying to hit a fly ball to get a sacrifice fly, or move a runner over and giving yourself up. That hurts your individual statistics, but if you move that runner over and then the very next batter knocks him in and you win the game by 1 run, that's something that doesn't show up in a box score, but all of your teammates really appreciate it. Or, maybe a starting pitcher has a really tough game and that long reliever comes in and has to eat 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah.
And just really kind of kill himself.
Yeah.
So that the rest of the bullpen gets saved.
Nice.
You may lose that one game, but because of that guy's unselfish performance, the team is in a much better situation for the rest of the week to win ball games.
Nice. Okay. And then getting through baseball now to when you were sort of anticipating your end, what made you think, okay, was it contractual, or did you say, okay, next year I'm stopping, or did you start thinking quite a bit before what you're going to do when you finish?
So because I was a bench guy and I had my degree, I knew I would want and need to do something when I was done playing. And so when you're a major league or top level athlete, doors are open to you.
Correct.
And I took advantage of that while I was playing and talked to a bunch of different people in a lot of different fields, and had it narrowed down to a few things that I was considering, so that when I was done, I wasn't just, okay, now what?
Yeah. Does that happen a lot? The now what is?
It does. And it's a very difficult thing for the vast majority of athletes when they finish, because it's not just what you did, it's who you were. I mean,
Correct.
From the time I was a little kid, I was Dave, the really good baseball player.
Sure.
It wasn't just that I'm Dave and I happen to play baseball, like now I'm Dave and I'm in commercial real estate.
Correct.
It's not who I am. But when you're in sports like that, at that level, it's who you are. It's your identity. And that's very hard for guys to make that transition. So fortunately, I had some good people as mentors who really kind of helped me navigate that process and start thinking about it while I was still playing.
And like, I noticed, like a lot of sports people, you're talking about like that element that you're in this, that's, Dave, the baseball player, because you create this character almost because that's you. And I noticed like a lot of people in America, and I mean all over the world, but a lot of people get into professional sports people, but there's only a certain amount will get into like the commentating, so they sort of stay in the mix. But that's not something that's available really to anyone, because you've got to be a good commentator, correct? In essence, you've got to know the game.
That, or you've got to be a big enough name. I actually did do a little bit of broadcasting, and I did consider staying in the game. The Red Sox were going to create an opportunity for me if I wanted to stay in the game when I was done. I guess a little bit about my retirement. I was with the Red Sox in 2005 at the beginning, after we had won the World Series in 2004. They wanted a left-handed hitting backup first baseman. So they had signed John Olerud. writing was on the wall there. They designated me for assignment, had a deal in place to trade me to another team. I won't mention that team because they were pretty bad at that point in time. And I just said, that was the first year when I went to spring training where the kids were old enough that they said, Dad, we don't want you to go.
Yeah.
I was 35 years old at that point.
Yeah.
And I had played on enough bad teams in my career. I said, I'd rather go out on top.
Yeah.
So did that. The problem with staying in the game is you're a slave to the game. And, for all the glory and the fame that comes with playing sports at the top level.
Yes.
It's also a brutal lifestyle. I mean, you're gone all the time. You don't get to see your family very much. You're always on the road. The hours are just absurd. You don't get days off. It's 6 or 7 with baseball. It's 6 or 7 days a week for 8 or 9 months out of the year. And then you take a month off and then you're right back at it training pretty much full time. So it's a really brutal lifestyle. So I decided I didn't want to stay in the game.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of broadcasting for a few years, just kind of on the side with the Red Sox, doing some pregame and postgame analysis. I really enjoyed it, but it was kind of getting in the way of the job that was paying the bills, and that's the real estate. So, just decided to focus solely on this and haven't looked back and have really enjoyed it.
Nice. And you mentioned something else, just, in terms of the team, the baseball team, like, in essence, whoever you played for at the time, in essence, you're with your team, you're building a brand and you're building the right team, correct, on the field, because people are picking and trying to create this amazing baseball team. So I actually want to move to Charles quickly, and thank you so much for that open, David. Appreciate it.
Mark,
Charles, just quickly on this, like, because I know you're good at this, like brand and building the right team. So like what David talked about, like, with the baseball team, you want to be the best team. You want to all, work together, because it's like, you get the World Series. I remember watching, all the best basketball players together. Then they weren't a good team. They're all the best players, but they weren't a good team. So, sorry, Constantine, go ahead.
Mark, no, I'm sorry to interject, but
Yeah.
I've been sitting here listening to David,
Yes.
and I was thinking about this a little bit before we got on this call. And as you know, my background includes a number of years of military service, a fair bit of that in special operations. And as David was talking, I couldn't help but recognize the same dynamic that people coming out of the military face, especially out of the elite units in the military, which in a way are analogous to elite sports.
We're like SEALs. You're talking about like high level.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they face the same issues that David faces, which is, you're taken out of a very team-oriented environment where, you sacrifice for
The team.
for your mates, to move the objective forward. Sometimes, you're going to take hits that you don't want to take. And then you make this transition to a civilian world that is a whole different world. And all of a sudden you're left without an anchor point in a lot of point. And you're trying to
off the stage.
Okay, what do I do with my life now? Like David figured out, and this is what we tell folks on the military side when they're coming out, probably applies to folks on the elite athlete side as well, with a couple of caveats. I think, as an elite athlete, probably you have some more doors open to you. Probably you might have some more financial resources going into it. But the challenges are still the same, which is, okay, what is it that I enjoy doing? What is it that I'm talented at doing? And can I combine these two in a way that allows me to have a fulfilling life?
Correct.
And allows me to spend time with my family, my loved ones, all these things that I've sacrificed all these years.
All these years,
In service to the team or in service to the country, whatever the case is. and, you know, I don't think a lot of athletes realize this, but it is very similar to military service, and the sacrifices and everything else that come up in that
Yes.
come up in their lives too. I'm
Constantine.
sorry, I just kind of put that together in my head as I was listening to the story.
No, I think you're totally right, and as you're saying. I mean, it's very extreme in both ways. It's like it's like you're on the stage, you know, in a theater play, and then suddenly you're in the audience, you know, like looking up, like, you know, looking at everything that's still happening on the stage.
And
So,
like
yeah, I
David
think-
was saying, the secret to success in a lot of these cases is, you know, relying on that network that you've built,
Yes.
those trusted friends,
Mhm.
advisors that you've met, because, you know, we have this less on the military side. I think David might have it more on the elite athlete side, similar
Yes.
to the entertainment side,
Yes.
where you end up with a network of a lot of hangers on
Mhm.
that may not necessarily truly be there for you or truly be there to add value, you know, and to kind of give selflessly to somebody they care about. So you need to kind of parse through that and say, okay, you know, where do I want to go? Who can help me achieve that,
Yeah.
you know, in a reasonable way? And how can I surround myself with people that bolster whatever weaknesses I have or provide strengths that I don't have?
Yeah.
Anyway,
like a
I'm
marriage,
sorry, I
eh?
didn't mean
What's
to
the-
interject, but
Kind of like a marriage.
right, well, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, you
Well, but I
build
think-
lifelong friendships and
Yeah.
relationships, and yeah,
But then maybe what you're saying is that is the transition. So it's like going back to where we were, like about the brand building. You have all that. You've got all your mates. You work. You know, David. You played baseball with them for 10 years, 15 years, and that's your crew. You know, that's your circle. You talk to them about a business deal or whatever, and that's what happens. But then when you leave that, it's just natural. You sort of separate from that. So like going back onto sort of the next topic, which we want to discuss, which is actually building the brand, because in essence, you are building the brand. When you're playing baseball for those years, you're building your team and your brand, and then suddenly it's gone. So is it then, like, Charles, going back to you, because I know you're the man at this, it's like you built your team and brand. How do you then transition that to getting outside and doing the same thing, but in a totally different world? Like, you know, like David did. Let's say now he's in commercial real estate. So do you take the people that you've done that with already, or do you try and build that outside, knowing that you're going to leave that kind of fraternity?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way David did it was inspirational, because you see that very rarely. You know, I'll have different conversations with MLBPAA or different, you know, football players that are transitioning, whatever it may be, or
Yes.
baseball players, and they don't think, a lot of times it's not very proactive in their thinking, and they're not thinking like David's thinking, where, okay, I'm transitioning probably in a few years. Let me start like planning this. You're just seeing what's in front of you, which can be really dangerous, because, you know, you get your law degree, you can use that in a many different diverse spheres of work. You are a professional baseball player, you have one specific area where you work, it's hard to transition. And so it's unfortunate, because you see a lot of people that have made it to the top tier and they're fine.
Yeah.
But then you have a lot of other Major League Baseball players, basketball players, et cetera, that they've had great careers, but they haven't brought in the income that would sustain their life for the rest of their lives. And they need another career. And so it's a challenge that happens. So I think, if I'm answering your question,
Yeah.
I think what David did was inspirational, and the way to do it.
So you're saying, in essence, you're saying keep that brand and team building, like keep it continuous. Like when you started in the baseball, let's like taking David's example, inside baseball, and then take it into the commercial real estate. So the lessons you learned about how to build the team, about how to do this, and use that, and actually develop that, you know, and use that as something, as a tool, you know, to
Exactly.
move out of the spotlight and into something that's, you know, meaningful and productive and all those different things.
Yeah, totally. And even I liked one of the points that David made was, you know, the platform that he had with MLB, he used for his commercial real estate. He had access to the contacts.
Yeah.
So he, in a way, carried that over, which was very strategic. So yeah, it's a continual process.
Okay, well, anyone, Jerome, do you have anything to say about that? Just in terms of like, building teams and, building teams and brand in essence, because I mean, not just from the sports side, but when you get off the sports side, how important is that in the law firm and in what you do?
Right. No, and I think David was very inspiring. Talked about,
Yes.
when you win, everybody gets paid. I think that kind of
Right.
philosophy, team philosophy. So kind of what we recommend is having a yearly meeting with all the advisors. So you have, the agent, the attorney, the financial advisor, you
Yeah.
have the accountant, you have the trusted estate person, the insurance, even the PR, marketing, and you get everybody in a room, or it could be virtual now, and you go through here, what are the goals for the year, what's the vision, what are some of the issues, and you kind of get everybody on the same page, and you kind of build this team. And I think, to Constantine's point, instead of having people that are hanging on that have different motives, you have a whole team dedicated to your success and what you want to accomplish in the future. And so I think this is something that I've seen, Charles do really well with the people that he represents. And I think Constantine and I have done that with our firm, is bringing in a team of advisors and people
Yeah.
that can surround them. And that's how I would look at it. And then the brand, I think, is really, it's about, what you want to do in business, what you want to do, and you're charitable, what's your personal brand. And I think being aware of what social media is in these days. And I think you kind of have to have a really strategic approach. And you really have to have a team. Some people are really savvy. I mean, there's some natural college players who can develop 1 million followers, but they're not all like that. I think that you need a team that can help you think about those things.
Okay, thanks, Jerome. Thanks for that. I agree with all your points. And I think the only one thing we're missing is, or just to sort of round everything up, is the broadcasting angle. So I'd love to hear what Mr. Zimmerman's got to say all about the broadcasting side with your experience and just transitions and anything else you want to add on that side.
It's funny, what you guys said all struck me as dead on, because we deal with a lot of guys who they don't do any preparation, and then they either retire or they get cut. So it's not expected. And then they want to go on TV or broadcasting. Me, of course I could be on TV. Well,
Sure.
no, you haven't, because somebody like David started doing it 3 years before he retired, and 3 years before he retired, and the year before he retired. And, everybody uses Michael Strahan as the example. He didn't just show up when he was playing for the Giants. He was doing local TV and local radio, and he was getting into it. He didn't just retire, win the Super Bowl, and say, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, he was building.
So a lot of these guys, they work at a local, on the radio doing local. They're in the off season, they'll do an appearance at the Super Bowl, the draft, or work for a network, which is fine. But then once they're there, and there's been some big name people who I won't name, who have been on networks, who just show up. And again, I'm me, I don't have to study.
Yeah.
That works like the first year you're out because you played against most of these guys.
Yeah.
The second year when there's rookies, and then the third year when you got to study, and you're not just going to stay there because you're you. You have to put in the effort, the same way if you work at a law firm. You got to put in effort. So the two things that struck me, and the other thing was, and I pulled up this stat, which I want to read, this from Sports Illustrated.
Okay.
By the time they have been retired for 2 years, 78% of former NFL players have gone bankrupt or are under financial stress because of joblessness or divorce. 78%.
Wow.
That's 4 out of 5.
That's huge.
It's a big number.
It's a huge number. So again, you're making $8 million a year, or $2 million a year, whatever it is, you're spending, all of a sudden you're not making that anymore.
Yeah.
You better have a backup plan, because you bought your mom a house and your buddy a car.
Yeah.
And I've also been around enough former athletes, like I'm sure we all have, where the minute you're done retiring, like, it's amazing. You go to that restaurant, they used to pull a table out almost like in Goodfellas. Now it's like it's 20-minute wait. Like, sorry, we're full. It's a 20-minute wait.
True.
And 2 years ago, I'm not kidding, they would pull a table out like in that scene in Goodfellas and put it right in the front. Like, here you go.
Yeah, that's so true.
You want to go somewhere, like, yes, all right, there's a line. No one knows you. The 12-year-old kid doesn't know you anymore. You haven't played in 3 years, so you better just get used to the reality. And the other thing is, and your wife says, hey, you got to take the kids to the doctor. Well, you don't have practice. You don't have a game. You better we need milk. Well, I'm meat. No, we need milk. Somebody better get milk. So you
Welcome
better
to
have a
real
job.
life.
You better have a job. So you're, feeling fulfilled in your own life and health.
Yeah.
If I could add to that too, Mark, that's a great point. Far too many athletes, finish their playing career and they just think that same kind of money is going to keep rolling in.
It does.
And it's a big shock for a lot of guys. If they haven't prepared themselves to go from making millions of dollars to all of a sudden, wait, minimum wage or wait, you want me to work all year for what?
Yeah.
They don't have a kind of a expectations set in reality.
Right.
I mean, I think the actors, you even look at actors, actors that it's kind of weird because you don't really acting. You can have a career your whole life, like Al Pacino, whoever. You can go forever, but some people they'll have this short span, which in essence is kind of like what we're discussing in the sports thing. And then the money's all there because someone's doing your contracts for you, someone's receiving the money, someone's sending it to your bank. You don't even think about it. But then suddenly when the credit cards are working, it's like, well, what's going on?
Average NFL career,
you realize
4 years. The average NFL player.
You realize how much it takes to actually to get that going. But some people are you're talented, you get picked up, like you're saying, and it's still hard work, but the money does flow good. But then when the tap goes off, it's a rude awakening.
So
in a lot of ways.
let me ask this question to David and Mark, because in my opinion, life after the game is to a certain extent dependent on life during the game.
Correct.
Otherwise, you're playing catch up, right? So what would you guys suggest as best steps for young athletes in their mid-career, whatever the case may be, and what are some of the follies that you see them making, aside from just, sticking their head in the sand and thinking everything will be the same forever?
If I could jump in, the first thing that I would suggest is actually get your education. Far too many guys go to college, if they go to college, in the baseball example, but most other sports, they're going to college, they're there as, student athletes, when really a lot of times all they are is athletes. They're coming out after 4 years or 5 years, and they've got really 2 years worth of credits and haven't really focused on their education. And so they're not really prepared when they are done playing. And even if you make enough money to be able to retire, if you're smart and plan, you know what, you can only play so much golf. Like when I finished playing
so much.
Guys told me, hey, take some time off before starting a new career. And that was great advice. The first 6 months were fantastic, being Mr. Mom, playing a lot of golf, getting to spend 24/7 with my wife. Well, I love my wife and she loves me, but guess what? 24/7, 7 days a week. That's just, she's like, you better hurry up and get a job and get out of here or I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, well, don't worry, because if I don't do that, I'm going to kill you. So I think preparing both before you play, but then during the time you play. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, doors will open for you. I remember one thing that happened. It was actually after I was done playing, but when I was doing the broadcasting for the Red Sox, I go into the green room at Nesson, and Jack Welch is sitting in there, the former CEO of GE, and he's like, "Hey, Dave McCarty," and I'm like, "Holy crap, Jack Welch knows who I am." And we started talking business and things that I was doing, and advice that he had for me, and doors will open for you while you're playing.
Great.
And you got to take advantage of it, both through, getting mentors, talking to people just in general, when you're at the season ticket holder luncheon and all. Don't see it as a chore, see it as an opportunity to network with people and talk to people. Your charitable work that you do, you meet a lot of the movers and shakers in that town in business when you're doing charitable events. The most important thing you can do is build that brand and make connections.
Yeah.
While you're playing, and doors will open for you, because when you're done, you're done. You're yesterday's news.
And if I may add something, David, something that you can latch onto while you're in athletics, while you're in whatever it is you're doing, while you're in the military, think strategically, right? Think strategy. Watch around you and see, how are they building this winning team? What are they taking? Oh, they're filling in gaps here and there. How do I apply that to my life? How do I apply that to my success? What are they doing on the marketing side? Are there ideas there for me? Just always be thinking a little bit more broadly if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Are
gonna
they
say-
surrounding themselves with folks who supplement their weaknesses?
Yeah.
So somebody's strength may be in marketing, where that's my weakness or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
somebody I should
Team.
have on my team,
Right.
rather than just having a bunch of yes men around you who are good at the same thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's growing that way.
Every event I've ever been to with a player of some kind, David's 100% right. People just hand them their card. If you want to have lunch.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I always have a stack of cards because they just hand it to me.
Yeah.
And we get back to everybody because, as you just said, you might not know you don't even know what real estate development is, but when you go have a lunch with a guy, you might be like, that's amazing. You
Yeah.
might want to work on Wall Street. You might hate Wall Street.
Yeah.
You might want to work for a book publisher. You don't even know. But David's exactly right. You have so many opportunities. You have a Tuesday off day if you're in the NFL, go spend it at, Goldman Sachs. You might hate it, but at least you'll know, check it off the list. And those opportunities won't be as common when you're not the star of the cocktail party in the year or two. So try.
Mark, yeah. So, but getting back onto that stat, the 78%. So why has that not changed over the years? Like, why people know that these things are coming? Do you think people are just fundamentally, they just think it's going to be different for them? They just think, oh, it's going to.
I said it before, but I'm me. I'm not going to lose all my money and get divorced because I'm me.
Yeah.
That. But you got to also remember, most of these guys, let's say they're 21, so 4 years brings you to 25, 26.
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about saving all my money when I was 25, 26. And,
Yeah.
I didn't, but if I made millions, I would have bought my buddies a car and my
Yeah.
mom a house that she doesn't
Sure.
need that's too big. And
Sure.
then, like you said, you break your ankle and the checks stop immediately.
I'm not going to be the guy that gets hurt.
Yeah.
Right.
Not me.
Right. So when I used to be a landscaper in college and I would get $500 a week, I'd put it in the bank. The other guys I worked with all said, oh, I have 500 to spend until my next paycheck. And I know there was a player on the Giants who got, I'm making up a number, 300 grand a week in his check.
Yeah.
And he would say to his buddies, I have 300 grand to spend, not put away what you want and spend 8.
Yeah.
So then the checks stop and you go, well, shoot, I still have the car in the house and now I don't have a check. So
Yeah.
you better surround yourself with some people who are smarter than you, whether it's a financial person, an accountant, and I would argue they should be separate people. So you have a little checks and balances.
Yeah, and I like what you said about. I mean, look, I've had, I was on radio in New Zealand. I was, everyone knew who I was in New Zealand. I did not to say much, but in 2003 I did Fear Factor here in the States, and I won like the championship. So I'm still. They never did it after that. I'm like the champion of champions. And the Kiwis, the New Zealanders love that. So when I went down there, it's the same thing. I was like, I couldn't walk anywhere with someone, offering, like I said, the thing on the table or whatever. But it's, you've got to plan, because that only, like you said, that only lasts for a little bit. And, I've always had this like pennant for landscaping or fixing stuff and renovating. So I've sort of come into my own, which was my after. Not that I constantly thought, oh, I've got a plan, but I was always dabbling in real estate and I always loved it. And that's where I kind of find myself now. Like I'm developing, properties right now in Mexico. But everything you're saying, David, Mark, Constantine, Charles, everything you're saying all makes sense, because even if you take it, if you never played sports, and it's like life after the game, it's after your game as well, because you might be an accountant, for theirs, but then, your country goes to war. I mean, look at all the people. I hate to bring it up, but look at all the people in the Ukraine. I got friends in the Ukraine that I met in New Zealand. Lovely people that had no idea that that everything was just going to stop. Like stop. That's like the check cut off, and you just. It's kind of like the life's unexpected moments. It's like you've just got to be prepared all the time. It's like Mark, you said, you know, you're making $500 a week. Like, put some of it away, because people just don't realize that life's not you. It's a constant, it's not struggle, but it's a battle. You got to keep fighting to, you know, to get to where you want to go. And the more you can think about things and plan for things.
You know,
I
also
wasn't really a
David said,
planner, but yeah, and Jerome and thing. To be honest, I mean, not to say that, but you know, the way that Jerome and Constantine work, like the way they schedule and plan, it's like I was never that person, but like I've taken on those attributes because it's important. It's important. And, you know, even like people who are watching that don't play sports or aren't a professional sports person, I think that, you know, life is a game. And you got to, when you get to the end of that, you got to have, you know, something, you know, to do and fall back on, you know, because you never know.
money fills your wallet, not your time. So you can have $1 billion. You know, Jeff Bezos, he doesn't really need to work, but he still keeps busy.
Correct,
Right? And if you have kids in school, you're not traveling the world. Or golf, I like golf, but it gets old for me after 2 or 3 days. So you
Correct.
better have something to do.
Yeah, Elon sleeps on the mates' couches. You know, he's like,
Right.
it's like, sure, you've got $1 billion, but you can use that $1 billion to create 2 billion. Not that you want to make the money, but it's to create value and stuff in the world. You know, so you can use your
Mark,
talents to do that.
You make an excellent point, and it ties into the idea of, you know, entrepreneurship, you
Yes.
know, and there's a question I want to ask there, because I see, you know, there, in my mind, you know, there's many qualities necessary for a successful entrepreneur, but there's a
Correct.
couple that I think stand out. And one is leadership, and the other one is resiliency, I think. And I say leadership because that's how you build a team, and that's how you motivate a team,
Yes.
right? And leadership is not just saying, hey, I'm the boss and I've hired a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually thinking about the team, thinking how to move it forward.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, caring about the team, you know, to achieve the goal. And with that, I had a question that I'll come back to in a second. And the second issue, as you guys discussed, is resiliency, which is, especially in an entrepreneurial situation, I'm going to face a lot of unknowns.
Mhm.
It's different if I go into a corporate environment and I have a job with set duties and a set schedule, et cetera. That's far different than saying, hey, I want to start something. I want to be part of a team that's building something, because there you're going to be faced with new challenges from day to day,
Yeah.
whether it's internal, external, et cetera. And how you handle that individually and as a team is going to be a big part of your success or failure. So with that said, you know, David, I know coming out of the military, leadership is something that is kind of inculcated in there by virtue of what we do and how we operate. My question to you is how prepared are athletes coming out of this from a leadership perspective? I honestly don't know the answer to that. And if the answer is not that much, maybe that's a skill they need to learn to cultivate as well.
Yeah.
But I throw that out as a question to Mark and to
Yeah.
David and to Charles, you know, all of whom have dealt with athletes kind of post-career.
I would say in sports, it really depends on the player. You know, I know from my point of view and experience, being a bench player, I had to kind of think along with the game and, you know, look an inning ahead and say, okay, now we've got some left-handed hitters coming up. They've got their top lefty still in the bullpen. The game's close. There's a real good chance I'm going to be pinch hitting. Or, you know, when Kevin Youkilis was a rookie with the Red Sox, I'd be down there and be like, hey, you know, be ready to pinch hit next inning because, you know, this.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of think along, and you develop leadership skills by being in that position. Whereas, maybe a guy who's an everyday player, or a star player, certainly, who doesn't even really need to think about anything like that. They know their name's going to be in the lineup every day. They're not worried about, who's in the bullpen still. The different variations that could come up and situations that they may have to be prepared for. Maybe they may not develop the leadership skills that other guys might, and I think a lot of times too, that's why you see in baseball, a lot of catchers, a lot of bench guys that have gone on to be successful managers, because during their playing careers, they're thinking along with the managers, and they develop those skills.
I couldn't agree more, by the way. I have found that every time I've been to an event where there's some quote unquote star player, they want to be told, where do I go and what do I do? They never ever say, I got this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, because they've been coached for 20 years. And everybody always assumes the player will just do what he or she wants. And the opposite is true. The player wants to be told, you're going to stand there, talk for 6 minutes, and do this. And they go, great. And my wife's a morning TV producer, and even stars, they come on, they want to be told, give me my direction like an actor. Stand there, do this, do that, walk off.
But the problem is
the other
that
players do better.
is a handicap after the game, right?
Interesting.
Well, that's why
Definitely.
the smarter guys, offensive linemen, catchers, like David said, they start doing things along the way because they see the game differently. A catcher, knows where everybody's positioned. He knows what the pitcher's going to throw. Aaron Boone's doing a good job. We represented Mark Schlereth, who's a center in the NFL. He was a great analyst. He wasn't a star player. He went through star player. Like, these guys just kind of get it, the offensive lineman. I've never met him in my life, but Jeff Saturday on ESPN, he was a center. He does a great job. Like, they see the field differently. If you're watching an NFL game, when they're in the huddle, the wide receiver hears like 3 words and runs out to his position, and everybody else is still there. And then the running back runs out, and the offensive lineman's still there. And then the play's over and they all go. Like, the wide receiver hears 2 words and off he goes. Linemen have to know 17 things.
Do you think, Mark, that translates though? Do you think, like what Constantine just talked about, like athlete entrepreneurship, do you think that athletes in essence not make better entrepreneurs, but do you think that learning those skill sets actually puts you in a better position to follow branching out?
Not always, but I think the good guy, again, I don't know him from Adam, but Eli Manning, he's a leader on the field. He seems like he could walk in a boardroom and direct people, but he has to know what he's talking about. It wouldn't be fair to put him in some real estate room. I don't know if he does real estate or not, and have him lead the room. But if he's prepared in what he knows and likes, then he'd be great. And people listen to him because he's a natural leader.
Yeah. I love one of the things I really love in my kitchen is the George Foreman grill. And it's like, it's something so simple. He didn't do a big career move, but he's like, listen, I love cooking. I'm going to put my name on this little toasting machine, mate. And it just killed it. But I just think that was like a simple transition from being an awesome athlete to then having something that he was passionate about.
He turned down the opportunity to just do a sponsorship or something for it and said, I'd rather just get not paid and get a piece of it. And Shaq did that with Ring doorbell. He went to like Lowe's or Home Depot and bought one and said, I love this thing. And he called the guy and he said, I'll do commercials for you for free, but I want a piece of the company. And then they sold it to Google for $1 billion, and he got $100 million. Like, he's a really savvy businessman.
Yeah, very clever. Yeah, have you heard the one where he sings in the shower?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know what it is, but I love that one too. Yeah,
Also,
he's good.
Too, I want to share also that opposite of that, which would be like a cautionary tale. Because these are all
please,
really
Jerome, I was going to ask you about that because someone actually mentioned.
I just, think about, you guys have thought about Boris Becker's in the news, right?
Yeah.
There's a great article BBC did, how a tennis superstar crashed down to earth. And what struck me was, number one, for him, fame was a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Number two, he was mired by financial and personal difficulties. He was unsophisticated with finances. So for instance, Shaq, this play that Shaq did at George Foreman, and seeing the kind of things that Charles does with Pedro Martinez, very sophisticated. Also too, I think having a strong marriage. I look at the athletes with longevity and finances, they have strong marriage somebody in their corner who's not just telling what they want to hear, but who wants the best. I see that with Pedro and Carolina. I see that with look at Clayton and his, I mean, you just see a lot of athletes with strong marriages. And not only is divorce painful, but it's very expensive in many ways. And I think that it's just, so that's one thing. The other thing for Boris Becker, you know, he struggled to find his role after retirement. I know, David, you mentioned this. He struggled with confidence and self-belief.
Yeah.
And so he ended up hiding, you know, $4 million in debt from the bankruptcy court, and he spent 2 years in prison. Here's a guy who's got a huge personality, charisma, and wasn't able to really capitalize it and latch onto it. Everybody's obviously, you know, pulling for him, but it's just an example of, hey, here's the opposite of what all these write-offs have done. And what can we learn? And what I see again is being sophisticated with your finances, having a plan, as David had mentioned, you know, having a strong marriage, and finding your purpose and what you want to do after, you know, after the game is done was really important. So I thought, and I'll put that article in the chat too, for those that are watching.
Can you, Jerome? So wait, can you just run it back quickly again? He hid some assets, right? Or what did he do? He hid some, and then he declared bankruptcy after.
He basically hid $4 million in debts from the bankruptcy court. So essentially he filed bankruptcy, but he shifted off assets to his ex-wife and girlfriend and different people. And so he tried to hide the assets, and that was a big no-no. And so they put him away for 2 years.
Is he actually in jail now?
It's going to be 1 year jail and then 1 year, I think, house arrest is essentially what it's going to be.
Gosh.
Go ahead,
Charles. I'm sorry.
Something that I haven't heard said yet, but I think it's important is in life in general, but especially for, you know, life after the field or life after the sport. If the player or the person wants to stay in to some degree the sport, it's really important to diversify, you know, to diversify what they're doing, to have multiple income revenue streams and things like that. And that's in life in general. You know, it's a good lesson for all of us not to put all our eggs in one basket. Like you mentioned earlier, Ukraine thing can happen. And I work only with Ukraine. Great. My whole business is shot, you know? So, but that's what we've really seen is, okay, where are the different revenue income streams we can monetize, you know, whether it's from memorabilia, whether it's from TV, whether it's from baseball deals, things like that. And so that's something really important I've seen is never. So they're going to go and they're going to say, okay, what do I want to do after my sport? But then I think it's even more like, what are many of the things that I potentially want to do with the sport, and what can I sustain and move forward at the same time? And so we've seen that to be really successful.
So diversify and spread spread those wings.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me just add something to what Jerome was saying in terms of, you know, whether it be a spouse or business partners or whatever the case. I believe it's absolutely true, and I take this from the military axiom of you never want to fight a two-front war, you know, if you can avoid it. And if you have a battle going on at home or within your own team or Discord, it's amazing how much energy it takes away from what should be the real battle, kind of you and your team against the world, you know, building a business, doing, you know, moving forward. So, you know, that goes too in terms of, you know, building your network and building your connections and building your team, you know, bring on people that will be your partners, you know, in life, you know, and of course that starts with your spouse if you have a spouse, but it also works with your friends and your business partners and everybody around you. You know, you don't want to be fighting with them. You don't want somebody on your team rowing in a different direction, you know, and that doesn't mean you're always right, but it means you have people that all really have, you know, the shared best interests in mind.
You have less conflict, Constantine, what you're saying, because I think conflict in any way, shape or form, it's just negative energy in essence, but it really, it really puts a halt on your creativity, on everything. It absorbs all your attention, and that's why it's difficult to progress. And I just want to add something quickly because it's got to do with, with you and Jerome. So I've got this. So Jerome's been helping me and constantly helping with this company I created, Crush It, which is a workout system. And through the pandemic, there's been a lot of difficult stages. China, I was going to produce in China. I couldn't get over there to see the product. The prices tripled. So I was going to be selling it for less than it's going to cost to make. I was trying to shift the production. And then we went to trademark the name. And we had patented the whole system, which is great, which I think that's where the gold is. But we went to trademark the name, and there's we got a letter from another lawyer saying, my client's been using this name for such and such a time. So it then progressed, and we sent them what we had done. It was back and forth. And then Robert, who also works with F&P, said to me that they've taken now a legal stance, something a little more thing. They want to throw this thing down and take it over. So I said, okay, hold on, bro, hold on. I said, go back to these people. Let's set up a conference call because I can see value with what she's doing and what I've built. And I said, let's do it together. Let's merge. Because alternatively, it's like two birds in the hand is better than one in the bush. That's an African saying. Like for me to fight this because I think, wow, this name, I have to have this. It's like it's what everyone's been talking about. It's like about being about myself. It's like for me, I can see something bigger, but they're not putting so much emphasis on what I want or what is mine. But rather just saying, look, let's try and make this work together because I think it's going to affect more people. So anyway, that's just one point I wanted to add. It's something like I'm going through right now. And it's like, it's costly, like you said, like a divorce, all these things cost a lot of money. So where you spend all your time trying to fight something and pay for it and everything, then you end up where? You're going backwards, taking steps back. So I always try and look for a positive outcome. And if you can keep things positive, just like Jerome said, in your marriage and you've got this great relationship, or with your business partners, just being totally honest at all times, then there's less chance of that conflict. You've got less conflict, then you've got these great positive thoughts and you're thinking forward about how to create good, lasting things. So I've been trying to merge, more into that sort of frame of mind. Which brings me to the next, one of the last things I want to discuss is charitable work, because I think being charitable is also a good phase, even if you're going through tough times, is to always be charitable. So I'm just going to open that up to the floor. David, Constantine, anyone out there, any of you guys, or any questions from our viewers, anything about how you view charitable work during the game, after the game, and any time of the day.
I'll say charity is obviously always great, but from a selfish perspective, the athletes go to these charity events, they meet a ton of people. So yes, it's good. Nothing bad about charity, period, but it also is selfishly a good way to meet a lot of contacts. A lot of rich people go to these events. So
well, there are all sorts of studies too that show that charitable work is good for your health too.
Oh. That's a nugget right there, David. We're gonna keep that one. Charitable work is good for your health.
It is.
Jerome, you're going to put that in your next book, eh? A quote from David.
No, that one, Dave, a lot of zingers in here. I mean,
yeah.
When you win, everybody gets paid, and work is good for your health.
I love those.
By the way, one final point, before we move off the conflict thing.
Yes.
When we say try to avoid conflict in the team or whatever, that doesn't mean make sure everybody around you says yes and kowtows to everything you say.
Correct.
That is so counterproductive.
Right.
But surround yourself with people that will give you their honest opinion, and their heartfelt opinion, and encourage them to do that and to come forth with ideas, because you're only one person at the end of the day. You can't think of everything at once. And if you surround yourself with good people that are empowered to kind of speak up and speak freely, you will get so much out of that you wouldn't even think about. And that's part of building a successful team. They're now motivated to continue to contribute.
Well, it creates accountability as well. You know, I saw in some teams where there was a really good team atmosphere, and you know, if there was a star player who wasn't pulling his weight, you know, I as a bench guy could call him out on it, and the rest of the team would back me up, and there would be accountability, and vice versa. You know, if I wasn't doing the extra work that I needed to do to be game ready, you know, somebody could call me out, and you know, it gets it out in the open, it gets it over with, and then everybody can move on. And I also saw in other teams where that didn't happen. You didn't have the accountability. You didn't have people who felt empowered to speak up, and that kind of stuff would just fester, and it would just eat away at the team. And then you'd see, you know, one group of guys going to lunch together and another group of guys going to lunch together, and there would never be any just team meals. And it really destroyed the teams from the inside out.
And it's not just about bringing the negative to light and dealing with negative things. It's also about contributing to the positive.
Positive, correct.
Right? It's like, hey, I got an idea about doing things this way. What do you guys think? You know, and maybe it's the mailroom guy, you know, the lowest guy on your totem pole on your team. They can still have good ideas. Correct. You know, as long as everybody realizes, you know, in the military community, you know, we, especially in special operations, we kept it open. Everybody said, listen, that's a great idea, or listen, that idea stinks. You know, you're going to get us hurt doing that. And you sit there and you think about it and you listen. As long as at the end of the day, everybody on the team recognizes that it's the leader's call, and the leader has to sit there and listen to what the team has to say. Right. But that's your job. You know, as an athlete, if you're looking to build something after the game, you got to remember all of that. You got to take that into account.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Konstantin. And I think I just want to thank all you guys for all these, you know, your beautiful thoughts and nuggets of gold. I think what I've taken from all of that is, if you're not playing any sport right now, go out there and do it, because, like, you know, having accountability and learning to contribute and say your, you know, speak your mind. I think those are great things that you need to take forward in, you know, life after the game, or, you know, life in the game. I think all of these things are so important just in life in general. So whether you are a sportsman moving on, or if you're, you know, just living your life, I think that going to get involved in a team sport, you can learn a lot of lessons that wouldn't be available to you if you didn't. So go out there, get into a soccer game, you know, down on the beach or wherever you live, little baseball on the weekends, and start to sort of mold yourself into the person that you want to be, where you can speak your mind, create the opportunities you want for yourself in life, and then have, you know, great people around you, a great team like these guys, like David, Charles, Konstantin, Mark, and Jerome. That's I found that to be super important. You know, having those people to bounce stuff off, but then also, learning the things like we've talked about, which is, you know, speaking your mind and learning how to interact with people, so that when you are in that position where you're thinking, what am I going to do when you're starting to build those, you know, those qualities that you need to move forward in this life on this planet. So I just want to thank you, Jerome, for organizing. Thanks, Konstantin. Thanks, David, Charles, and Mark for joining us today. Thank you for sharing us your very valuable insights. And when Jerome writes his next book and David's in there, please, guys, also, Mark, Charles, you throw in a couple of quotes, and we'll remember, you know, we'll remember life after the game. Little talk we had. So thank you all for joining us today. And if there's any more questions, please just go into the message saying Jerome. They'll get them at the law office, and we can continue to answer stuff if there's anything else in particular that you wanted to ask or wanted to share. So we'd appreciate that. So thank you all for joining us, and you guys have a great weekend. I know you guys are all over the place, Texas, New York, San Francisco, all these beautiful cities in America. So thank you all. Thanks for welcoming me here. I love America. So
we'd love to have you. And thank you. Big thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.
I know you guys take a lot of time out of your schedule. It really means a lot to us in the audience. And just, I took a ton of notes here. So just even myself. So really thank you guys for taking the time out. Thank you, Mark, for always being a wonderful host. We really appreciate you.
All right. Hey, thank you. Thanks, Jerome, for having confidence for me to do it. I appreciate it. Guys, have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.